How did the Mafia go from Godfathers to gangsters? The Italian Mafia is one of the most popular crime organizations in history. So much so that they're considered the archetype for criminal gangs. You can't say Mafia without thinking of Italy, although technically they've spread around the world. But what started out this legendary organization? Organized crime has existed since humans banded together into tribes. It was only a matter of time before someone realized they could make more money working against the system than with it. While the modern Mafia is a mix of necessity and circumstance, there are some definite things that started it all. Here are 10 points that started the Italian Mafia. Number 10. A lack of protection. Modern-day Italy is known for its beautiful countryside and ancient ruins. Back in the 1800s, it was known for being a poverty-stricken mess. Following the unification of Italy, the new government didn't have a strong presence in Sicily. There were more churches than palaces. When the people needed help, they had to rely on themselves, which led to the creation of small gangs that offered protection. Of course, if you couldn't pay them, then they'd be happy to steal your stuff. Either way, the government wasn't going to stop it. They barely had an army at the time. This created the perfect opportunity for organized crime to flourish. And as we know, once a business finds a market, they take advantage of it. 9 criminal masterminds. During the early days, the Mafia wasn't just a bunch of thugs getting into bar fights. The men who started the movement were actually pretty smart about it. Sure, they were criminals, but they knew how to get ahead. Instead of relying on brute force, they often manipulated the people around them to get their way. Let's use Lucky Luciano as an example. He's considered one of the founders of modern-day Mafia. Sure, he was involved in smuggling, extortion, and murder, but he also understood marketing. He connected with labor unions to control the docks and transportation systems of New York City, giving him control of one of the busiest ports in the world. This was a genius move because it allowed him to control shipping both above and under the table. 8. Birthplace of opportunity. There's a common saying that if you want to do things right, you gotta do it in Italy. That may be true for pizza or wine, but not so much for banking. While the Mafia originated in Sicily, they took off in America. This was due to a combination of factors. First, the American prohibition made bootlegging incredibly profitable. Secondly, the U.S. had no connection to the Mafia, meaning they could operate freely. Finally, America was a melting pot of immigrants, many of whom were desperate for work. It didn't take long for word to spread about the lucrative opportunities that came with selling illegal substances. All that was left was for them to set up shop and make some connections. 7. Family business. If you ask anyone why the Mafia is so successful, they would point to the family dynamic. Families stick together and they'll do anything to protect their own. Well, that's a nice sentiment. It's a nightmare for law enforcement. Early on, the Mafia families kept things tight-lipped, rarely ratting out their own. This meant that police investigations were nearly impossible. To make matters worse, the families were quick to avenge their own. If you crossed the Mafia, you could expect retaliation, not just against you, but your whole family too. So even if police caught a few members, they'd just end up with names on a list. 6. Cosa Nostra. For those unfamiliar, Cosa Nostra translates to our thing, although many assume it means our family. That's not quite true, but it fits perfectly. Cosa Nostra is basically the Italian Mafia code of conduct. Written down by the turn of the century, it defined the group's philosophy and how they operated. One of the biggest tenets was the idea of silence. Members were expected to keep secrets close to the chest, even if it meant going to jail. Another important aspect was respect. You didn't talk back to the boss, and you never refused a job. If you did, you were a dead man. These rules helped to maintain control within the group and ensured that everyone played their part. 5. Bootlegging. Remember when we talked about the Great Depression? Yeah, that was a rough time. People were losing their homes, turning to crime, and fighting over scraps. Alcohol wasn't exactly making things better. When Prohibition began in 1920, the Mafia saw an opportunity to make some easy cash. Bootlegging alcohol was already a thing, but it was mostly done by small fry. With the Mafia backing bigger shipments, it became a real problem. Not only were they producing and distributing large quantities, but they also had the manpower to protect it. There was nothing the police could do. Every shipment arrived safely, and the party continued across America. 4. Murder Incorporated. Ever wonder where the saying, "go to the mattresses," came from? Well, it has everything to do with the Mafia. In the early 1930s, a wave of violence swept through the underworld. Gangsters were waging war in the streets, and nobody was safe. This period became known as the Castellamoris War. Although technically a war, it was really more like gang warfare. There were no clear alliances, and shifting loyalties were common. The violence finally ended when the Mafia aligned with the new boss, Lucky Luciano. However, this cemented their image as ruthless killers who weren't afraid to get their hands dirty. No, 3 unions. If you thought the Mafia was just a bunch of dumb thugs, think again. They knew how to make money, even if it meant working with the enemy. Labor unions were, and still are, a great way to get ahead, especially if you work in construction. You have power in numbers, and unions can negotiate higher wages and better conditions for workers. Of course, they can also be used for less savory activities like extortion and racketeering. It didn't take long for mobsters to realize the potential of union membership, and soon they began infiltrating local chapters. They used their influence to secure profitable construction projects and shook down businesses for protection money. Before long, unions became a powerful tool for organized crime. No. 2. Las Vegas. Sin City is one of the most profitable places in the world. Gambling, drinking, and show business bring in billions every year. And let's not forget about the tourists. They're looking for fun and don't care what they're paying for it. This made it the perfect place for the Mafia to set up shop. They brought their expertise in entertainment and applied it to Vegas. Soon, the Strip was lined with iconic casinos and hotels. But it wasn't just the profits that attracted mobsters. It was also the anonymity. There was always a steady stream of new faces in town, making it easier to fly under the radar. Plus, the glitz and glamour of Vegas provided the perfect cover for their illegal activities. Who would have thought that organized crime could look so glamorous? Number 1. Hollywood. It seems like every major city has a Mafia museum now, but it wasn't always that way. For years, the Mafia tried to keep a low profile, knowing that drawing attention to themselves could get them in trouble with the law. However, they also knew that there was money to be made in the world of entertainment. So they began infiltrating Hollywood, hoping to make it big on the silver screen. Of course, their efforts were often clumsy and ended up drawing more attention to themselves than they bargained for. However, they did manage to make a few successful films and TV shows, which helped to cement their image as savvy businessmen. Just goes to show that the Mafia is a lot more than just a bunch of thugs. They're also talented entertainers. Well, that's it for today. Are you surprised by the history of the Mafia? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.